I want to give you a version of Believe Me If All These Endearing Young Charms. My relation to this song is intertwined with my relationship to Unitarian Universalism, because I came into this movement in the beautiful Unitarian Church in Charleston, which has a room in the tower dedicated to its longest-serving minister, Samuel Gilman, 19th century, from about 1820 to 1853. He is best known in the world as the author of the Harvard alma mater, Fair Harvard. And it borrows the tune from this song, which was very much popular around that time. This is beginning. Now, the story of this song, though, Thomas Moore is the Irish equivalent to Stephen Foster, but he lived about 50 years before Stephen Foster, wrote a lot of songs. This is probably his best-known song. And the story of this song is that Thomas Moore had wooed and won the most beautiful woman in the area. And they were very happy together as a young couple, but then his wife got smallpox and was terribly disfigured in her appearance, and she locked herself in her bedroom and would not come out until he wrote this song and sang it to her through the keyhole to try to convince her that he still loved her as much as he ever had, regardless of her beauty or the way it may have fled. Believe me if all those endearing young charms that I gaze on so fondly today were to flee by tomorrow and flee from my arms like fairy dust fading away, thou wouldst still be adored as this moment thou art. Let thy loveliness fade as it will, and around thy dear ruin each wish of my heart will entwine itself fervently still. It is not when true beauty and youth are thine own, and thy cheeks unprofaned by a tear, that the fervor and faith of a soul may be known, to which time has but made it more dear. Yes, the heart that has truly loved never forgets, but as truly loves on to the close, as the sunflower turns on her God when he sets, the same look that she turned when he rose. We ended our little poetry session last Wednesday for the observance of National Poetry Month with this lyric from Dylan Thomas, which I memorized when I was a young man. I think I still got it in there, I hope so. I didn't bring a sheet of paper with me. It's been called the most perfect lyric in the English language, and it seems to me to be resonant with the idea of the time. Where did the time go? Now as I was young and easy under the apple boughs, about the lilting house, and happy as the grass was green, the night above the dingle starry, time let me hail and climb golden in the heydays of his eyes. And honored among wagons, I was prince of the apple towns. And once below a time, I lordly had the trees and leaves trail with daisies and barley, down the rivers of the windfall light. And as I was young and carefree, famous among barns, about the happy yard and singing as the farm was home, in the sun that is young once only, time, let me play and be golden in the mercy of his means, and green and golden. I was huntsman and herdsman. The calves sang to my horn. The foxes on the hills barked clear and cold, and the Sabbath rang slowly in the pebbles of the holy streams. All the sun long it was running. It was lovely. The air playing in the fire green as grass. And nightly, under the simple stars, as I rode to sleep, the owls were bearing the farm away. All the moon long I could hear, blessed among stables, the nightjars flying with the ricks and the horses flashing into the dark. And then to awake, and the farm, like a wanderer, white with the dew, come back, the cock on his shoulder. It was all shining. It was Adam and Maiden. The sun grew round that very day. So it must have been after the birth of the simple light, in that first spinning place, the spellbound horses walking warm out of the whinnying green stables onto the fields of praise. And honored among foxes and pheasants by the gay house, under the new-made clouds, and happy as the heart was home, in the sun-born over and over I ran my heedless ways. My wishes raced through the house-high hay, and nothing I cared in my sky-blue trades that time allows in all his tuneful turnings. So few, and such morning songs before the children, green and golden, follow him out of grace. Nothing I cared in the lamb-white days. The time would take me up to the swallow-thronged loft by the shadow of my hand, and the moon that was always rising, nor that, riding to sleep, I should hear him fly with the high fields and wake to the farm forever fled from the childless land. Oh, as I was young and easy in the mercy of his means, time held me, green and dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea. Mayflies and Moonbeams. What links the last three poems are three conceptions of time. Thomas More's "Believe me if all those enduring young charms contrast the transient and the permanent. Love is not time's fool. Beauty is transient. Love is permanent. And if it is true, lives on after beauty fades." Dylan Thomas's "Fern Hill" is an elegy for that childhood and youth, which only comes to us once in our lifetimes, and closes by saying that we all are held, green and dying, by time though we may sing in our chains like the sea. Alicia Carpenter's great hymn laments that the human life, when truly seen, is briefer than a kiss. It is said that fish have no conception of water because they know nothing else. They spend all their lives immersed in it. I think something like that goes on with us with regard to time. We swim in an ocean of time and we're not aware of it. Oh, we know the measurements of time. We know what day it is, what hour it is, and how long it is till we next will eat or sleep or go to a meeting or watch the next TV show. As the fish may know whether the water is cold or hot, or deep or shallow, or salty or fresh. Yes, we're aware, perhaps too aware, of the markers of time. But what is time in itself? For one thing, it's elastic. It's not uniform for us psychologically. Time hangs drearily when we're bored or when we're waiting for something good to happen. Do you remember how Christmas Eve used to seem when you were a kid? You thought the sun would never come up. And now there are nights that seem to speed by in a second. And the sun is streaming in your windows and you want to say, wait, I was just getting to sleep. You might get enmeshed in a musical performance or a book or a movie or a great conversation, and you don't want it to end. As the sands of life slip through the hourglass, we often have the impression that they are speeding up. For the last 10 years or so, Jacqueline's father, Charles Schwab, not the broker, has been writing poetry. And after he passed his 90th birthday, he wrote a poem called Reflections of a Nonagenarian, where he starts out by asking, on reaching that reputed ripe old age, is this when life's fruit is sweetest? When one should stop, lean over, and savor its succulent juiciness. But then he encounters a hooded figure in black, beckoning him. And he responds, what's the hurry? Can't you see that I'm almost ready? One more taste, a few more bites. Won't you kindly try again later? Think of summer visitors who put out thousands of dollars to come here for their one precious week of Cape Cod vacation. Your heart has to go out to them because if it rains every day, they're not going to appreciate their time here. It will hang heavy on them. And the more young children cooped up in the little weekly rental, the heavier the time will hang. But now, think of the mayfly. The mayfly lives as a naiad, a larva in the water, for a year. But then its life as an adult insect with wings is about a day. A whole life in a day. Suppose you were given only one day to fly around. One day to see everything you were going to see, and it turned out to be a really lousy day. With driving rain and blowing wind and bitter cold. Wouldn't you feel cheated by life? And does the contemplation of the mayfly make you feel a little bit better about your life? Maybe your own life is not the quality you expected day in and day out, but there's a lot more of it. For if this day is a particular downer, there's always tomorrow. Until, of course, the day comes for each of us when we have run out of tomorrows. Won't you kindly try again later? The mayfly's scientific name is Ephemeroptera, which is a combination of two Greek words, ephemeros, lasting a day, and pteros, wings. So is the winged being which lasts a day. I think we can learn something from ephemeral things. I think we can learn something about the value we place on time. For one thing, there's a disconnect between time and our minds. We know everything we know through our minds. Maybe animals do too, and maybe the mayfly does. But as far as we know, no animals but humans regularly think in words and use words to construct reality. And when we use words to construct the world, we're borrowing them from a dictionary, from a lexicon that is basically outside of time. Oh sure, language changes over time. The meaning of words and syntax and styles of inflection are subject to evolution, and we will have more difficulty making sense of Emerson and Shakespeare than more recent authors. But language also has a conservative character. Language creates stories, and stories take us away from the here and now. Our dogs and cats, and songbirds and whales, they don't tell stories. They undoubtedly have memories and use them to avoid unpleasant or dangerous things, but they live fully in this moment. Our language-bound minds give us an idea of permanent things, but the reality is that everything is always changing. Heraclitus said, you never step into the same river twice. The only thing constant is change. And the Buddha said that the fundamental character of reality is impermanence. The old hymn says, time like an ever-flowing stream bears all its sons away. Buddhist monks will spend 3 days making an intricate and beautiful mandala of brightly colored sand and then dump it out to demonstrate impermanence. For the Buddha's first noble truth is that everything is dukkha, which can be translated as suffering, but can also be translated as unsatisfactoriness. And the second noble truth is that the cause of dukkha is our own craving and clinging. Craving and clinging to that which is by its nature impermanent, but which we want to make permanent, which we want to hold on to, because that's all our ideas can grasp, because we've learned to hold on, or try to hold on to that which cannot be held on to. And the third noble truth is the way to overcome dukkha is to overcome our craving and clinging. Maybe this is the meaning of it all. Let go. Let go. Live in the passing moment. Applaud it as it passes. Get into the mayfly mode. Suppose you only had a day on this earth, but instead of panicking, despairing, or mourning, you decided to meet this fact and make the most of it. You resolve to make this the best day of your life because it's the only day you've got. Here at the elbow of Cape Cod, we are often heard to complain that spring is the beat of an eyelash between winter and summer. If you sleep late one morning, you might miss it. But suppose we just said, we're going to seize springs by the lapels and dance with her as long as she's around, and when she passes into the summer, we'll just wave goodbye. My life history breaks down to roughly 4 phases, and this week it hit me that by this summer, I will have lived 20 years in New England, in the 4th phase of my life, which is the same time I lived in Charleston, South Carolina, in the 3rd phase. I think that most of us have lived elsewhere at some point in our lives, and many, if not most of us, have family, which is off Cape. We may look back nostalgically at the previous places we've lived and previous phases of our lives. Some of us may be inclined to rate the phases, to ask ourselves whether we're happier now than when we were in Hartford. I think of that as basically a futile exercise, because the you that lived in Hartford 20 years ago is not quite the you that lives in Chatham today. We can improve on Heraclitus. Not only do you not step into the same river twice, it is not even the same you which steps in the second time. Southerners, of which I am one, have a famous tendency to live in the past, a tendency highlighted in the plays of Tennessee Williams. The past, properly considered, has much to teach us, but it is a very uncomfortable place to live. Now that may sound harsh. Many people here are widowed, some divorced, many are separated by hundreds of thousands of miles from children or grandchildren. I'm not saying at all that you can't treasure memories of good times gone by. By all means do. But the way I want to live is putting the most into getting what I can of the day I am given today. Time can have a way of seeming compressed when you think of your total lifespan on Earth. I've often talked about the strangeness of spending time with my death row client, John, just before his execution. How strange to be conversing with a person who knows exactly how much sand is left in his hourglass. It lent a certain urgency to the conversation. And I've always liked this poem by Stephen Dunn about the way a scary airplane experience affects one's view of time. It's called Different Hours. And one note on it, it uses in the second line a German phrase called Sturm und Drang, which is literally storm and stress. It refers to Goethe's and Schilling's romantic emotional poetry, which was a reaction to the rationalism of the 18th century. This is Stephen Dunn's Different Hours. As the small plane descended through the "it's all over now" Sturm und Drang, I closed my eyes and saw myself in waves of lucidity, a vanisher in a long process of vanishing, of solitary character, truant heart. When we landed, I flipped down my daily mask, resumed my normal life, my normal dreamy life of uncommitted crimes. I held nothing against me anymore. And now, next day, I awake before the sound of traffic, amazed that the paper has been delivered, that the world is up and working. A dazed rabbit sits in the new grass. The clematis has no aspirations as it climbs its trestle. I pour myself orange juice, home style. I say the hell with low-fat cream cheese and slather the good stuff on the bagel. The newspaper seems to be thinking my thoughts. No hope for lost men. Link between laughter and health. It says scientists now know the neutrino has mass. Quote, the most ghostly particle in the universe, one of them called it. No doubt other scientists are jealous who ask the right questions too late, some small failure of intuition leading them astray. No doubt, too, at this very moment, a snake is sunning itself in Calcutta. And somewhere a philosopher is erasing time's empty passing because he's seen a woman in a ravishing dress. In a different hour, he'll put it back. I think of that philosopher. Time seems empty in the larger picture. Our existence seems meaningless until amid the random experiences of life you come across the woman in the ravishing dress. That has no inherent meaning either in the universe, but you are surprised to find it has an effect on you. And you are thinking of that woman long after she is out of your sight. And for the time she is in your brain, life does have a meaning. Maybe not the most cosmic of meanings, but certainly a meaning for you. Only after the woman in the ravishing dress has quit paying rent in your brain can you return to the chalkboard and rewrite time's empty passing. On May Day morning for the 12 years I lived in the Boston area, I would get up at the dawn's light and go down to the banks of the Charles, where assorted Morris dancers, fools, musicians, hippies, and Harvard undergraduates dressed in tuxedos and ball gowns would celebrate the May in dance, maypole, and songs, traditions imported from England, which went back several hundred years. My wife Jacqueline used to study English ritual and social dance, and she says that in the British Library, such things are categorized under the heading of ephemera. They're not studied as essential history. They do not rank with the Battle of Hastings or the Magna Carta. If Englishmen and women had never dressed in white and put flowers in their hair and danced around a pole with ribbons, the course of history would probably have been about the same. Well, there is one exception to that, but it did not happen in England, but in Puritan New England. Right up the road from here in what is now Quincy, a renegade lawyer from the Plymouth colony made his way up there and began consorting with the pagan Native Americans, gave them alcohol, and in spring erected a maypole on a hill called Marymount, which was so tall it could be seen out to sea. His name was Thomas Morton. The Plymouth settlers were scandalized on hearing of this, and they sent a party to break up the party, chopping down the maypole and arresting Morton. Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote a famous story about it, the Maypole of Marymount. The site is now a park in Quincy. Maypoles, like mayflies, are ephemeral things. They have no more substance than moonbeams. And yet they remind us that the wheel of the year has come around again. Many of you will elect not to physically dance in a few minutes. You're all welcome to. Many of you will elect to watch from the safety of the lawn or portico. But you are dancing anyway, bound up in a cosmic dance. One of my favorite benedictions is by my colleague Kathleen McTeague, and it ends, "Let us seek to remember the wholeness of our lives, the weaving of light and shadow in this great and astonishing dance, in which we move. We are engaged in this dance, whether we live for a day or 80 years. To engage in it is not to forsake all productive effort. The ant dances along with the grasshopper, and we had lots of dancing church ants crawling all over this place yesterday. Like that, huh? Church ants as opposed to church mice. Buddhist sage Thich Nhat Hanh says the present moment contains past and future. This thought is an echo of lines by T.S. Eliot at the beginning of his great poem, Burnt Norton. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future and time future contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. What might have been is an abstraction, remaining a perpetual possibility only in a world of speculation. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present. T.S. Eliot. The other day I was at a music session, and one of the other musicians played a tune which was a favorite of Alice, a member of the session who died last year. And the tune made me stop and think of how Alice used to play it, and for a moment I dropped out of the present. But then I realized that the retreat into memory had just made the playing of the tune more vivid in the present, had added to my enjoyment a tinge of nostalgia. Thich Nhat Hanh also says, drink your tea slowly and reverently, as if it is the axis on which the earth revolves, slowly, evenly, without rushing toward the future. Live the actual moment. Only this actual moment is life. As we sang a moment ago, the spinning universe is our home. The present moment is our home. The maypole and the dance symbolize it. Eternity is hard to ken, and harder still is this. A human life, when truly seen, is briefer than a kiss. Time is the great gift we are given. It is May. Let us treasure this great gift. Amen.